Hi, this is Jennifer over at DecorSauce, and today I'm going to teach you how to reupholster a Victorian era style chair. First of all, I want to go over the list of supplies that you need for this project. I think that you can actually do this project using a regular stapler, or you can use an electric powered stapler. But I started out that way actually, and I think it's very difficult. I think it's easy for you to get sort of trapped in that process and think it's really hard, which it shouldn't be. I can honestly say the pneumatic staple gun is probably one of the things that changed my life the most when it comes to DIY. So if you're going to do more than one upholstery project, I would recommend it. I purchased my pancake air compressor and pneumatic staple gun from Amazon.com. I think the whole setup was probably like around $100 for everything. This is my pneumatic staple gun. It's a Surebonder. It works great. It goes along with the pancake compressor that you see here. The other items that you need for this project are a staple remover tool. Looks like this. You can find them at the hardware store. You can order them online. Staples to fit your staple gun, a glue gun, and GIMP. And this is what GIMP looks like. It's actually it's used in a lot of chair upholstery projects that you aren't able to staple your fabric up to underneath your piece of furniture. And then last but not least, you need some cotton batting. I also ordered this online. If you look at my website, underneath the where to buy section, you'll see where I buy this. And then this is regular sort of brick and mortar store batting. Here is what the chair looks like when you remove all the fabric that's originally on it, and this is what the chair is going to look like after it's all finished. And as you can see on this one, I decided to do the arms in a contrasting but complementing fabric, and I did the same thing on the back, and I'll do the same thing with this chair. So first things first, you remove the original fabric and try to keep it intact, in good condition, so that you can use it as a pattern when you go to put fabric back on the chair. This one I removed the fabric from both the back and the seat cushion and the arms, and then painted it. It's a ivory colored lacquer paint. So now it's ready to go, and I will show you the process. Here is the fabric that I have pre-cut out to fit the chair. I used this was the original, and as I don't know if you can tell or not in the photo, but it was in really bad shape. This was actually from the seat, and basically you just lay your new fabric out onto, or your old fabric like this one, out onto your new fabric and try to cut around it, and then that makes a pattern for you. These kind of chairs also have usually a piece of foam that goes in the back and also a piece of cardboard. This you need to keep. I mean, you can try to find some sort of hard piece of cardboard that you can cut out and switch if this is in bad shape. This one actually wasn't too bad, so I'm going to reuse it. I like to reuse everything that I possibly can. I do generally add more batting or some new things if I need them, but if I can get away with using the original stuff, I do, just because it's already a perfect fit, and there's no sense of doing extra work when you don't need to. And the same thing goes with this piece of foam. This was the piece of foam from the back. It's in really good shape as well. So I'm gonna also use it, and I may just add a little bit of the cotton batting in between the foam and the fabric, just to kind of soften it up a little, because this is sort of a really dense, heavy foam, and it's not super comfortable to sit on. So the cotton batting really kind of helps soften that up a little bit. Okay, generally when you start an upholstery project, you start with whatever layer you took off first the last time. So if you look at a piece of furniture and you see that the piece that's on top, that needs to come off first, and then that will be the last to go on. So in this case of these chairs, the seat part is the first part that you put back together. So that's where I'm going to start. Okay, as you can see here, I've taken my cotton batting and I've sort of softly laid it out on the top. You want to be careful when you use this stuff because it's very temperamental. It rips really easily, and so and then once you sort of tear it, there is no coming back from it. You cannot take it. You cannot fix it where you've torn holes in it. So you sort of gently lay it out, making sure that you don't have to pull it too much or tug on it too much. And then when you go to put your fabric around it, you'll just sort of tear off any of the excess, carefully tear off any of the excess that gets in the way of using your staples. I've put this on the seat, and then I'm also going to put it on the arms because the arms are really, the padding is really not that great anymore on the arms. But I just wanted to tell you about this cotton batting because when you're working with it, you just want to be really careful with it. Okay, so as you can see here, I've laid my fabric out on top of the batting kind of the way that I want it to go on the chair. And as you can see by this side over here, right by the arm, looks like when I made the pattern, I cut it a little short right here on this side, and I don't like the way that looks. So I'm going to start with this side, knowing that I can sort of hide this mistake and then maybe make it up when I stretch and pull the fabric over here to the other side. Now, as you can see by the back here, you can see the little holes that are along the chair frame. That's actually where the original staples were, and that's actually where they're going to go back in. This chair is a little bit different than some of the upholstery projects that you'll see because the fabric gets stapled right to the front instead of to the underneath side. So your work has to be a little bit more precise in a chair like this. I probably wouldn't recommend this type of chair for a beginner just because the precision that is required to kind of the cutting of your fabric and sort of the stapling it also to the frame. You want to make sure that it looks nice at the end, which is why this project requires a glue gun and GIMP. It's sort of to hide the staples because it's really the only way to do it on a chair like this. As you can see down below here, this is where the staples will go. Again, when I attach the fabric back to the chair, it goes all along this front line. So you just want to make sure that when you sink your staples into the frame, that you sort of do it in a way that you know that the GIMP will hide it at the end. So I'm going to fire up my air compressor now, and I'm going to put a few staples in for you. Okay, I just wanted to show you how it looks after you get your first set of staples in. Like I told you before, I was concerned a little bit about this one side because it was a little short. So I attached this side first, the side that I didn't really like the way it looked, and then I attached the second side next. And as you can see by the way my fabric looks, there's a lot of wrinkles in it. And that's okay because when I pull the fabric in every direction and attach it to the back and the front and all the sides, I'll pull all these wrinkles out. But I just wanted to show you so that if this happens to you, you don't get worried about the way it looks because this will be fixed when you stretch all the fabric over all the sides. Upholstery projects require a lot of strength, and this is why. So I also wanted to show you kind of what it looks around the edges where I did the staples. So when you do a project like this, you're going to have a raw edge with all of your staples in it, and that is absolutely fine. If you have enough fabric and you want to tuck it you know, and then put the staples in so that it's not a raw edge, it's more of a finished edge, you're more than welcome to do that too. However, you're going to use GIMP to cover it up anyways, so it doesn't really matter. And then when you're all done, I want to show you this side too. This side's going to be a little bit longer before it's all said and done. As you can see, I've got all this excess fabric. So then what you do after you get all your staples in, you sort of just trim the fabric around the edges just to remove the excess before you add the GIMP. So I'm going to keep going on this project and continue to put the staples in. I'm not going to do it in the video because my compressor is really loud and you wouldn't be able to hear me anyways. So I'm just going to go ahead and sink the rest of the staples into the chair, and then I'll show you what it's like when it's done. Okay, so I'm done stapling around the chair, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like when all the staples are in. As you can see, the top is perfectly smooth because like I told you before, when you pull everything, it kind of smooths it all out. One of the advantages to using a solid fabric versus a pattern fabric is this very case. If you cut something a little bit short, or you need to manipulate your fabric a little bit to hide a mistake or a flaw, it's easier to do that when you have a solid pattern fabric, because then your pattern won't go askew. If you have a pattern like a lined pattern or something else, and you have to compensate for a mistake, you can pull the fabric to distortion, and then you could obviously see that when the product was finished. And it's too much work on these pieces to kind of risk that, which is why I like to do the pattern pieces on more of an area of the chair where you don't have to do a lot of stretching. The backs on these particular chairs are good for that because they're very rigid, and you don't have to do a lot of stretching, so the pattern doesn't get distorted at all. So this is what it looks like around the chair where I stapled. As you can see, there's a little bit of excess fabric. I tried to do the staple lines pretty even, pretty straight across. I don't like to go crazy with them because when you put the GIMP over the top of it, you want to be able to hide everything. If I had one staple up here and one staple down here, well, one of them might show. So it's just easier if you do them in a straight line. As you can see, it looks pretty good. This is the side where I was concerned about the corner, and it ended up looking just fine. As you can see down in here, this is kind of what it looks like. These arms, there's no choice but to go around and do some stretching. And that's where the GIMP comes in too, because you just glue it all along this fabric, and it hides all of these puckers, the fraying, it hides all of that. So yeah, it looks good. And as you can see, it's completely straight across. It doesn't have any wrinkles or anything like that in it. So the next part that you do for a chair like this is you have to get rid of this excess fabric. I do that using these little needlepoint scissors. They work great. You don't have to put your fingers in them. You can just kind of cut all along the edge here and do sort of a clean line. And then your GIMP will cover all that up. So I'm going to go ahead and trim around the chair edge and get that all ready to go. And then I will walk you through the next part. Okay, now that I have the seat cushion done, I'm going to move on to probably the easiest part of recovering a chair like this, and that is the back part. I've already cut out my fabric to the exact pattern of the inside frame of the back of this chair. As you can see by the one that's already done, it's just fabric. There's no padding or anything in between the fabric layer and the cardboard layer, and that's simply because you don't sit there, you don't put your back there. It's basically just for looks. So I have my fabric laid out right here. I'm actually waiting for my steam iron to heat up. I'm going to iron it before I put it on because you don't do a lot of stretching with this fabric, because it's going to go on the inside, so it wouldn't pull out any of the wrinkles that are already existing in here. So if I don't want a chair that has wrinkles in it forever, I'm going to go ahead and press the fabric before I staple it on. This is, of course, going to be stapled to the back of your frame on the inside, or I'm sorry, inside out. What you're going to see is the inside of the fabric. It's going to be stapled by you to the inside of the frame. That way the pattern is on the back. Okay, now that my fabric is pressed and ready to go, I'm just going to begin stapling on the back. Do it by holding it up in the exact pattern that you cut it out of, right along the staple line. And I kind of like to just double check my fabric before I begin stapling, just to make sure that I have equal lengths on all sides. And then that way I don't end up scrambling at the end to try to correct any mistakes that I might have made when I was cutting the fabric out. I just kind of like to start tacking it up. I don't like to go crazy right away with all the staples because I just want to make sure before I go all the way around that I have enough fabric, like I said before, That way you're not pulling out staples and trying to correct mistakes at the last minute. It's also sometimes helpful to do one at the top and one at the bottom and one on each side, and sort of start in the middle and then work your way all the way around to the corners. So I'll start here in the middle, here in the middle, and here in the middle, and then sort of work my way out to the outer edge. And then that just seems to keep your fabric from sort of bunching up in weird and awkward ways. So I'm going to go ahead and finish doing that, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so this is what it looks like after I've tacked it on with all the staples. I don't like to go crazy when I staple this first layer in, because you do have 2 more layers that need to go on top of it, and you don't want your staples to sort of like bounce back out at you. So I tacked it up. As you can see, I made sure that the pattern was straight so that when you staple it on there, it doesn't look crooked. It's too much work to make a mistake and not check. So when you tack it up, as you're going along with your staple gun, you just want to make sure that your pattern is remaining straight. Like I told you before, when it comes to the seat cushion, stretching or pulling it to sort of hide gaps or hide sort of mistakes you made when cutting just doesn't cut it when you're working with a pattern. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go all along the edge here, like I did along the seat bottom, and trim all the excess fabric. And that's just because when the next layer goes on top, it's harder to cut the excess fabric after that's already on top of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. Okay, now that I've sort of trimmed all along the edge and cleaned up the edge of this excess fabric, it's time to put back up the piece of cardboard that I had you save earlier. There's no need to staple all the way around the chair with this cardboard. I just like to tack it in a couple places, maybe like 4 or 5 staples or something like that, just to hold it in place. And then after I tack that up, and also I wanted to point out to you too that it's sort of like concave now, just because of the shape of the chair. The concave part, or the part that bows out in the back, actually goes to the back. And not to the front, and that's just because the cushion has pushed on it as it's been used over the years. So after you tack that up a couple different places, then you put your foam piece back on. I'm actually not going to add any extra cotton batting or anything to this piece of foam, just simply because I don't think it needs it. So I will tack that up in a couple places, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so once you've tacked up your piece of cardboard, like I did back, just to hold it in place a little bit, now you sort of fit your foam back where it was originally. And you want to make sure that it's up high enough so that it doesn't slide down and that you don't have to sort of tug on it the entire time that you're upholstering. So here's my top fabric. I already have it cut to fit. It's not as exact an outline as the back piece was, only because it has to be a little bit larger to accommodate the thickness of the foam. So as I lift this up high, I'm just going to kind of loosely start where the pattern does, and start putting my staples all the way around this edge here. So I'll kind of show you just how I get the process started here. Make sure your foam is nice and lined up, or as lined up as you could possibly get it to begin with. And then start by affixing your staple into the top, right at the edge. And then probably what I'll do now is I'll actually go in, I'll kind of tuck my foam up into the pattern here, and then I'll put some staples in the bottom just to kind of hold the foam in place as I go around to upholster the rest. Okay, now I've finished stapling on the back of the fabric, as you can see here. And I did want to tell you too that when I do this last outside edge, I like to sort of tuck it under before I staple. As you can see there's no raw edges here. I mean, there's some from the layers underneath, but that I can cover up when I use the GIMP over the top. but it's really hard to trim a clean edge on this last piece of fabric. So I just like to kind of tuck and staple. The advantage to doing it like this is also that if you find that your fabric is a little loose here and there, you can always like just tuck and pull it again and restaple it. As you can see, like by this top layer here of the chair, there's actually, if you look really closely, you can see 2 layers, and that's because I started stapling the first layer, and then I found that there was a little too much play in the fabric, so I just pulled it and tucked it and stapled another row, which is totally fine because it's all going to be covered up with the GIMP at the end. So all I have left to do now is the arms. I'm going to pad them first, and then I staple around the arms the exact same way that we did the rest. And as you can see when I lift this up here, you can see all the little staple holes along this dark piece of wood here. That's actually the original color of the chair before I gave it a nice coat of fresh paint. So I'll put a new piece of batting over the top of this existing piece of foam. I'm not going to take it off because it's fine. It's worn a little thin, but it's in good shape, and there's no sense of replacing something that I don't have to. So I'm just going to take another piece of cotton batting, layer this over the top, and then take the arm pieces that I previously cut out and then staple them right around the edges and get that finished. And then after that, I'll show you how to do the GIMP. Okay, now I am finished with all the upholstery. As you can see here, I finished the arms. And now all that's left to do is the GIMP around the edges. So I know I told you that you were going to use a hot glue gun earlier, and that's what this is for. You're probably thinking, no way, you can't use a glue gun on upholstery projects, but actually that is what the manufacturers use, or at least it appears to be that way when you remove the GIMP, when you take off the original upholstery. So I've seen multiple chairs like this in the stores. That's exactly how they do it. It's really the only way that you can cover the staples, and hot glue is easy to work with, easy to come by, easy to manage, and so that's what you do. So the way that I start the GIMP is actually in the back. I like to start in the corner so that it can start here and then go all the way around in a single piece. I might piece around the areas here around the arms if I have to, but generally the reason why you want to buy it in a big bolt like this is so that you can do one long continuous piece. The more you have cuts in it, the more obvious it is. So no matter where you start the GIMP, make sure that you do it in a relatively hidden spot. Like you would never want to start doing your GIMP, for instance, like right here, because obviously when you have to meet those seams up at the end, it's harder to hide that overlap. So for like the back, for instance, I might start down here in a hidden corner, just so that way it won't be noticeable when it's finished. And the same thing goes with the arms, and then obviously around the edges of the chair. Anything that's in the front and center of your eyesight needs to sort of be a continuous whole piece and not piecemealed as far as like the end and the beginning is concerned. So I'm going to heat up my hot glue gun, and then I'm going to, like I said, start at the back and go all the way around the chair. Okay, so now I'm going to quickly show you how and where I start on the GIMP. Okay, so I already told you that I start along the back corner, so I'm going to start right here. You have to, when you work with hot glue, if you never have before, it's really hot to the touch when you first put it on. So I kind of try to move quickly, but I don't want to burn myself either. So I kind of set the glue and then slowly put the GIMP into it. GIMP, when it comes with a little piece of tape on it, I always put a piece of tape back on it because it frays really easily, and then you'll just have pieces of falling apart GIMP, which is no good. Also, when I affix it to an upholstery piece, I just leave the tape on it. By the time we get back to the end and we cover this up with the other piece where it meets, you'll never see it anyways, and it's just one extra layer to keep it from fraying. If you don't like the tape or you think it's too noticeable, you can use Freight Block as well, which is a product that's sold at like a big box store. and that it's kind of like a glue, and it will kind of hold that from fraying as well. But in this case, tape is really easy. You'll never see it. So I take a little bit of the hot glue and I start it right in the corner where I want to start the GIMP. And when I move this, or when I put this on, I sort of have to go along where the staples are because I want to make sure they're covered, which is basically why you do this part of the project anyways. So I just put the glue on and I sort of press the GIMP in, making sure that wherever I put it, that I'm also covering up the staples. That's really important. I probably only do about maybe 2 to 3 inch sections at a time. That way I can manipulate it easily without burning myself as well. So basically you just start here and you go all the way around the chair. And then I'll show you what I do next when I get away, around the corner, because I do want to show you how to do the corners as well. I just wanted to show you what I do when I get around to this part right here. So as you can see, if you look really closely, you can see how the fabric ends right here. So basically what I do is I tuck a dab of glue right in the corner, and then this GIMP turns really easily to cover all that up. So I basically just continue along with my glue along all the edge of this fabric like this, and then attach the GIMP, then continuing down on the other side. It's really easy, not a perfect science, but it works really well. And like I said, this is exactly how they do it when they manufacture the furniture, because I've taken apart many of these chairs and I see this every time. So basically that is it. That's how you work around the corners, and I will continue around the rest of the chair and show you what it's like when it's all finished. So when you get all the way around the whole chair and you get back to where you started right here, I'm basically just going to trim it with my really sharp scissors right beyond where it meets here, and then glue the whole thing down really well. And basically the glue will just make sure that it doesn't fray at all. But it also, as you can see here, the piece that's taped that's underneath is actually, you're never going to even see the tape because it's going to be covered up with hot glue. So basically that is how you end your cording that goes all the way around your GIMP, that goes all the way around the chair, just like that. Okay, so I have finally finished going around all the edges with the GIMP around the armback chair, around the Victorian armchair. So here you can see the after. It's all completely done. If you wanted to, you could also embellish right on top of the GIMP with decorative tacks. I just kind of like the GIMP in this case. I have a lot of furniture in this house that has the decorative tacks, and I like that look too. But for this chair, I'm just going to leave the GIMP showing because I think it looks a little bit more feminine and also a little bit more Victorian, which goes with the look of the chair. This project took me about 4.5 hours today to complete, just the upholstery part and the GIMP part. So just to give you a kind of an idea about how long a project like this takes, and that's for me, and this is probably, I don't know, maybe my 50th or 60th piece redoing. And that's basically why you can see that that professional upholsterers charge so much for this work. My mom recently had a Victorian chair, an antique actually, reupholstered, and it was $175 just for labor. She had already purchased all the supplies and the fabric. So, you know, sometimes it's more expensive to have a chair reupholstered that you like versus going and buying something new. So that's why I like to do the work, just because I like to have the really nice furniture and I don't want to spend a lot of money for it. So here again is the completed armchair pair. Thank you very much for watching my video. Please check out my website at www.decorsauce.com, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel where I will continuously post new how-to videos at least once a week. Thank you.